Oh, hello, good morning, good afternoon. Great to be with you today. I'm looking forward to sharing with you um, what I've been working through what is it that I love, focusing on what is my truth, focusing on what is my message, what is it that I stand for, and what is true for me in the discovery of my authentically alive, living my foundations, my pillars of success, in creating what it is that I am wanting to produce and sharing how I think about that. And what I was working around today was uh, creating truth and living truth and creating and living life. And so I thought of those three as like, oh, a way to think about that I'm creating truth. What does that mean? I'm living truth. What does that mean? And then if I'm creating and living, what does that mean? And I link all those together into life. Mm. And so as I link it to life, then it's creating and living becomes the intention and the outcome. It's like the intention, the desire, and the living part of it is the following through, is the doing. And it's all, both of those are aligned in the direction of our truth. And then it's with our truth, can we create then new creating and new living? And it's like change can happen only through truth. Life can happen through truth. And so much of it is that we are looking for truth out there rather than for the truth that's in here. And part of this is noticing what are we avoiding, because to access truth requires a choice. And a choice means we are aware of a decision. We can notice that we are avoiding our truth. We can choose. We can try that on. I could be avoiding my truth. What would I have to believe? What would that look like? See how you've surrendered in a way to allow yourself a new perspective. And what we're working here with truth is to be creating. So we're choosing to create truth. First one is to create truth. And so we have to know what our truth is. And to prove or to demonstrate that we are in patterns, that we are hooked, that we are in our own stories, we are in our own beliefs, our own patterns, that we are avoiding the truth. We are avoiding our truth. And this has us confused. But in order to do this, in order to walk you through this demonstration, a really fun exercise, I'm looking forward to sharing this with you and allowing you to see for yourself what it like, are you avoiding your truth? Or are you really creating what you want? And there's as an exercise to reveal for you what is obvious. What are you focusing your attention on? What has your awareness? Because when it's awareness, we can see the intention, we can see our patterns, and then we can change it. We can choose to change it. And here's what I'm bringing in is like in our truth, we have to be able to choose, which means we have to allow what is. We have to allow all information to be there, just not what we want to hear. And this is life, and this is the experience of life. And I hold life is we are here as an experience. We are here to experience life. And it is our choice how we can experience that life. And it's first in this to say, like, the first decision and choice, I think, for you is to observe that there's hope. Observe that there's positive. Observe that there could be love, positivity, abundance, gratitude, peace, calm, life. And then that is like, here's the three things that I'm observing about this. It's like choosing to observe is that one, that's life. It's like, oh, in the direction of continuing and amplifying growth in life. That it's creating, that I can choose in the creating of, free to express my true desires, and that everyone else has their true desire to experience their life, their way, their choice. And that truth breathes life in its powerful potential. Powerful potential. And that's the first thing to just be surrender to and allow, is that, oh, there could be hope. Because in that, we can create it. We can create what we want. We can create in this direction. We can create truth. We can live truth, and we can create our living. And it all matters with what our focus is on. And so now I'd love to do step into an exercise. And in this exercise, I would like to pick up a piece of paper, blank piece of paper. And like you were going to read a book with it, like as you were, if you were reading a book, and just fold it in half, right down the middle, right, a long ways there, like a book. Here would be a letter. If I was reading a letter this way, right, and then here is a book. Paperback book. Just kind of open it up and just like, oh, just to recognize that that's your middle. That's your middle. You would one way to think about this is on one side would be like on one side is your we'd call it negative. Let's call it negative. There's negative emotions, negative thoughts, all of like negativity, scarcity, limitations, perspectives, right? Just see, all of that. Fear, conflict, good. Worry, stress, good. Just feel it all over there. Just put it all over there on that side. Just think of it on that side of the paper. Good. Now go to the other side of the paper, and this is the positive. This is growth. This is life. This is abundant. Yeah. Good. Now just write some things over here. What do you notice about this over here? Good. Good. And over here, we'll call this like your perfect average week. Oh yeah, that'd be like, oh yeah, if you live that, that would be like, and you're gonna always add more to it. This is just, we're working a muscle here. And if you don't have anything, this is fine. Just to acknowledge, I'm like, there's nothing there for me. It's like, oh, maybe I haven't worked out this muscle. No need to judge, but just acknowledge. It's like, oh, would I want to put something out there? If I did, what would I put out there? What would it be like? And you can begin to create and work this muscle either way. But again, remember, it is your choice. And so if you're just thinking about that, remember on the one side, you put like the negative, like the limited, the scarce, pulling you down, like just feel it, like where is it at? And then on the other side of the piece of paper, think of it like, oh, this is what you would love to have, right? This is the positive. This is, this feels good out here. This is like what I've dreamed about. And so much of an adult, we've turned this part of it off. It's like to allow this back in, to give it some energy, to foster and create it. And this is like what we would look at is like, you could say, this is like, oh, this is my perfect average week. This is living what I would love. This is how I would want life to be. And then just as you come now, just look in the middle, because you've looked at both sides. You've looked in the middle, just come in the middle. Imagine yourself on the 50-yard line here on the middle of the page here. And you can see both, here's the negative and here's the positive. And there's so much room to create whatever it is about your life that you want. It's like you can choose. And as you just notice and you look back over your last week, and you think, imagine your week is on this piece of paper, 100% of your last awakening time, the time that you've been awake, represented on this 100% of this paper from here, from say my negative. This is my negative here. This is to my positive. It's like, oh, I'm wondering, where's my focus been during this awakening time? It's like, oh, it's like 100% of my waking time has been focused on positivity. It's like there was no negative. It's like, oh, I lived my perfect average day, 7 days in a row. Yeah. It's like, and I just like celebrate that. That's whatever, it's there. It's like people are doing that. They've got their self, their way, they're out of the resistance and they're creating, they're going for what they love. That's wonderful. There's not very many of us. Yeah. There's not many but I think a lot of us are ready for the journey. Yeah, good. And just notice, like, how much time did I think about enjoying the moment? Like, how much positivity was in that time that I was awake? 100% of the time would be all the way over, and just draw a line, a vertical line, roughly where that percent of time is. And what it is doing, you're separating your negative and your positive, just separating them for you, just a visual separation. Good. And so if you're like, oh man, it's like and just make it easy, right? Just feel it into it. Just like, this is nothing here. This is your story. This is your measurement. It's like, 50% of the time I think I'm positive and 50% of the time I'm negative. Perfect. You're right on the middle, right? You're right on the crease. You said, oh, like 25% of the time I'm positive. Oh, okay. So you'd come over 75%, like right here, and say, oh, like 25% of the time I'm positive and 75% of the time I'm negative. And it's like, oh, here, look at all this space that I have to write my negative, what shows up. And it's like, oh, if there's a lot to write there, then you know that your focus is on it. That means that you think about it a lot. And if the area matches up that you don't have a whole lot to write about, like positive, then it's like, oh, they match. But the other way could also be positive. It's like, you could have a whole lot to write about what was so good about it. It's like, oh, you're thinking about positive, but you're looking at your life through a narrow lens. See how there's different ways that we could look through this exercise. And that's why it's so amazing, is that it's wide open for you. Good. Just notice, like, just allow it to be. Like, what is true? Is that true? Does that feel right? It's like, yeah. It's like I spend most of my time worrying. I spend most of my time fear of failure. I spend most of my time beating myself up. Most of it is like, oh, what percentage? Like, how much? No, there's some good times in there. There's just some moments that I really love being with my family, and I'm just in the moment. It's like, yeah, maybe it's 60-40, right? 60 positive. It's nothing here. It's just to acknowledge, and then start writing it out. And when you're writing it, you're adding another part to it. And as you write or as you speak it out loud, what you're testing, you're seeing is like, oh, is that, how true is that for me? Is there congruency there? Does that line up? Oh, and then we allow ourselves to visualize, oh, feel it. Like, what would it feel like to do that? And these are the first two steps in our creation, in creating what we want. And remember, we're here to creating truth. And so first we have to understand what our truth is. Where is it, the source? What does it feel like? And then what is it that we're creating? And is that, it's like the intention and the emotion come together. That's the action. And so as you're writing with that, just to notice, it's like, use this as a gauge to see, like, what is it that you think of? Like, what are you noticing? And in this is like, if your negativity, if there's a bunch of, if you're easy to focus on what's negative and what's wrong with the world, and easy to put blame and beat yourself up, and it's like I'm judging all the time, like that's a big pattern of mine. That, it's like, no need to beat yourself up, just to acknowledge. Part of that is what I say is like, celebrate that. This exercise is here is to reveal what is true for you. It's a start. It's a beginning. It's a muscle that you can choose to work out. And it's like, oh, it's like, how am I living like the best life possible? And if I were, what emotions would go with that? What would it be like? And it's like the journey getting there. And then as you created that, as you have this, all this stuff that's here, really what shows up on your negative side of things now is what is keeping you from having that. And in this world, we call this resistance. This is the resistance to being that, to having that. And this resistance is what keeps us from acting for it. And this resistance can be beliefs, it can be emotions. What at the end of the day, all it is a charge. It's a feeling that is there, that's been trapped, that when it can be released and it can see new perspectives, can be included in, it can be part of the experience. That's when we can allow these personalities to be smoothed in, and we can go for what it is that we want to create. And so we're working on getting our ego, so that their ego and our unconscious, so there's no resistance to what we're wanting to create. And this is a process. And first place a process is um, a willingness. Yeah. Wanting to know what truth is, what life is, what creating is, and willing to challenge, and open to all that's there. Well, I hope today was a way to see where your focus is aimed at today, what it's aimed at, and what we can look at is like, oh, is that in the direction of your perfect average week? And it's like, how much attention, if you wanted a perfect average week, right? That's part of what we're dissatisfied with, is we want something better, but like, what put something to the better? If we would just run around with this idea that the future is going to be better, or this situation is going to be better, we'll never be able to have that. And this is to notice the pattern that I go here, is just to notice this pattern, this communication pattern that our thoughts and our feelings are so connected into, that we can really work to make some rapid changes inside of that. And so I'm looking forward to continuing this series around creating and living our truth. So next time what we're going to go into is more into our truth. uh Kind of, this was the setup, this was the background, this was like your truth. And what I set up was that we're resisting what we really want. We think we're going for what we want, but in all reality, we're avoiding it. And that has us in these loops, in these circles. And so the next one is to look at, how do I know what truth is? Where do I find truth? How do I communicate with truth? And the good thing is that you started with it. Uh, and so it is our earliest patterns. It's our fundamentals, our foundations. It's like our foundational patterns. It's just like to connect back into those as a child, as from 0 to 4, where we were learning and exploring the world before we had words. That's what's fun about this new communication source. New communication is to line them all up, all the three parts of us run this: the self-conscious, the ego brain, the thinking, the rational, the one that wants to look good, lined up with the unconscious, which runs and operates 96 to 99% of our day, of all of it that goes around it. And then our focus, is just through our ego and our thinking brain, allows us to put attention onto, to enjoy the moment and exclude everything else, right? And so it is what we pay attention to, what we focus on, and then how we feel about it creates what our moment of now is. And we can use the past to create what it is that we want in the future when we allow ourselves that capability. But when we are a victim or powerless, not powerful, then we are unable to believe that we can do that, and that there's other things that are more powerful than us, and that it has us in these loops, noticing this loop over and over again, that the future will always be better, but I don't know what better is. I can never have better. And therefore, it's just a fantasy that I'm really avoiding what I really want. And I say that's what we find most people in today. And in this is to discover the truth, whether or not you want to hear it or not. It's your choice. When it's revealed, when it's aware, it's like it's your choice what your actions are. I think to get back to life, to amplify life, to help connect us together. And it's like, oh, I am part of that. I am that. It is me. And it's just like in the direction of living and amplifying and making other people's lives better, like in my life and their life, adding to life, anding to life. And in that is like creating, it's a choice. It's a choice to be anding. I can also choose to be oring. I can choose to compete. I can choose to be dominant. I can choose my perspective to come from, and I choose one of creating rather than some problem solving. That is the one that I'm choosing to leave behind, because out of truth, I think truth breathes life, and that to be our unique self, to express our truth in the way that we need to true, the way we need to do it, is part of living, is part of our experience. And I think every one of us, yes, has the right to that. And it's to know, become aware of what are we putting our focus on, because that is where it all starts. It's all choice, just that we all have choice. And so thank you for allowing me to first come in and thinking about creating truth. And so there's a structure around creating, there's a structure around truth, and there's a structure around living. And it all matters where you start, what you put your focus on, and what it is that you want. Because if you don't know where you're going, what you're focused on, how would you ever allow yourself to have it? So looking forward to working and continuing on, aiming at putting direction on what is true, working that muscle, working that skill, and then structures and foundations for living and being and becoming. Cool. Until next time, thanks.